Hello and welcome to MPE 2022 interview series. Today we'll be talking about post-pandemic fraud trends and fraud prevention. So today I have with me Britanny Allen from Sift and I have Pamela Motta from the New York Times. Thank you for joining me, ladies. I'm looking forward to discussing this topic with you. So I think it's fairly well documented that online fraud rises significantly when we go through peak trading periods such as holiday sales and big promotions, and that fraudsters find it quite easy to hide their activities during these periods of volume and where customer shopper behaviour changes. Now, although the pandemic has certainly been no holiday for anybody, it has driven a lot of consumers to buy online and to also take up services such as buy online, pick up in store. So we've seen a lot of different changes in consumer behaviour and in the volumes of online traffic that merchants are processing. I'm really interested to see how this may have been mirrored in the behaviour of fraudsters and what impact that's had on the fraud trends that you're seeing. Britanny, I wonder if I could come to you first for your view on that, please.
Absolutely. So you're completely right about more fraud emerging from those higher traffic patterns. And one big significant difference over the past 2 years is that a lot of that higher activity volume didn't just come from people who were experienced in buying online, who had been doing so for years, but from people who were new to it because either necessity, maybe their local shop was closed and they had to get groceries delivered online for the first time, or just any other manner of us trying to hunt down the last roll of toilet paper in the world. Whatever it was, people were buying online as sort of newbies and therefore were less sophisticated. And fraudsters were then able to find targets that had maybe less awareness of red flags or potential to look out for fraud when they were then making those purchases online. So, whether that's buying from a shop that is not a legitimate shop or just otherwise falling for a phishing attack, fraudsters found that they had all of these new targets. And in some cases, unfortunately, those consumers were also not very well equipped to understand the value of just their presence online beyond, let's say, a credit card saved to their account on a particular website. But maybe they didn't understand the value of loyalty points or other things that they could accumulate that fraudsters love to target. One particular pattern we saw emerge last year was the increase in taking loyalty points earned via travel websites such as hotels or airlines that were generally going unused when travel was locked down, but instead could be turned into purchasing power on consumer websites where you could buy electronics, such as some new headphones or whatever the fraudster wanted. And we saw a huge uptick in that, probably because a lot of people weren't monitoring those travel accounts when there were lockdowns to begin with. But I mean, this can go in so many different directions to answer. I don't want to take too many other points away from Pam so that she can also comment on this. But really, it was something that absolutely, like you said, went hand in hand with that increased online presence for the entire world.
That's interesting. So, what I take from there as well is that consumers have been very much targeted, not just merchants. This is really had a wide impact in terms of these newer trends and going out into the loyalty points area as well. So not just the typical card fraud. That's interesting. Thank you. Pam, have you got anything you'd like to share from your own experience in this area?
Sure. From a merchant's perspective, I think where we were impacted during the pandemic was really around bad actors doing credit card testing on our premises. Being a subscription business, having a ticket price that that's not as large compared to maybe any retail merchants. Um, we would be an attractive target for these bad actors. And so just to illustrate this sort of new normal that we had to pivot towards, two years ago I went to the same conference. I went to MPE, and the the big discussion there was really around making the payment experience as frictionless and as seamless as possible. Fast forward 2 years later, this frictionless, seamless experience has made it also easy for bad actors to come in and in our case, do credit card testing. And so, really, to shift into this new normal that we're faced with, we had to really balance, um, where do we put, um, intervention or friction strategically, so that bad actors are given, or sort of bad actors are given friction so that they are discouraged to continue to keep using our premises as a clearinghouse for credit cards.
Mm.
Um, and at the same time, we continue to give the best experience to our legitimate visitors. And so that's really where we are. We're trying to find that balance and thinking about this more strategically than really more tactically, um, because we need to be able to keep the bad actors away, but invite the legitimate visitors into our site.
I think most merchants will certainly relate to that problem of finding the balance between friction, customer experience, and preventing fraud. It's kind of the perennial problem, but I think, especially now when you have this demand really for that frictionless experience, it's an even more delicate balance. So thank you for sharing that experience. I'm interested in what you said there about the card testing ground and how you have to act strategically to look at what tools and techniques you can put into place to help prevent those. I don't know if there's anything you can share with us that's not too sort of sensitive in terms of advice around that.
Yeah, I mean it's a relevant topic because we are right now thinking about what that looks like strategically.
Mhm.
But some of the actions that we're taking to put friction strategically is really having more intelligence about the traffic that's coming to us. If we know for sure, if we have a high certainty that certain transactions are fraudulent, then we can be more confident in applying either friction or straight out blocking the traffic. If we're not sure, if we have, medium confidence on traffic, then maybe we would ask for some kind of verification. And then if we obviously if we know that the traffic is legitimate, then we give them the experience that we should give legitimate visitors.
Sure. Brittany, I'm interested to hear because I know Sift, obviously a technology company, you're real proponents of using data and intelligence. So just kind of taking what Pam was saying there about using intelligence in this fight against fraud, can you tell us a bit more about what value that data can bring into that and what kind of tools and techniques that merchants might be able to use?
Yes. Well, first of all, I absolutely agree with the idea of dynamic friction. You do not want to put all of those roadblocks and points in front of your legitimate customers whenever you can avoid that. It's wonderful. You really want to focus in on the most suspicious activity, the accounts that are potentially taken over by other individuals or the ones that are fraudulent registrations, whatever that current big challenge is. So if you are then able to use your data to separate out different paths for those users as they begin to use your website, then that is a great way to really narrow that focus. So when it comes to the fraud side of it, though, always keep in mind that while we are analyzing data and we are looking at all of our user activity to determine what may or may not be suspicious or risky, fraudsters are also testing our systems as merchants to see what we can get through, or what they can get through, and how they can take advantage of a platform. I've heard of one particular fraud pattern where the fraudster was able to visit a website and try to log in to another person's account. And then, based on the wording of the 2FA prompt that they received, they could tell whether or not that 2FA prompt came from a opt-in choice by the account holder to turn that on for their account, or it was in fact a security prompt generated by the website because the website had some suspicion about that activity. Unfortunately, that merchant used two different sort of templates, some different wording. So then the fraudster was able to, while doing a credential stuffing attack and putting in mass logins, test which ones they were likely not to be able to get into because the user had opted into 2FA. And even if they got the 2FA blocker that they on some of the other accounts, if they knew it was due to maybe they didn't have the best, most convincing IP and device combination or whatever else the merchant was using to filter, they were going to try again and again and again because they knew there was a potential to get around that 2FA prompt. So for us, we're definitely monitoring the differences in all of the customer activity that we're able to see, but keeping in mind that at the same time the fraudsters are on the other end stress testing a merchant's platform and also learning from the signals that they receive. You can't forget that there is another person at the end of that computer. It's not just the faceless hacker with a hoodie at the keyboard, but it's someone who is really running this as a business and is a full-time fraudster.
Thank you, Brittany. That's a great summary. I think what I take from this is that there's so many factors and so many evolving factors in this equation that merchants really have to stay on top of to make sure that they continue to adapt to fraud trends and to those very smart fraudsters who unfortunately are never resting. So I just want to say thank you both for joining me. It was a really interesting discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.